Many stories and experiences about Professor Vadia were shared at Winston's memorial service. Laughs were had and tears were shed. Although Professor Vadia is gone, his memory and work live on at the San Jose State campus. Live in San Jose, Nick Austin, Update News. Unlike the computing chips in classical computers, like this one here, quantum computing chips, or qubits, are smaller, more advanced, and harder to control. Microsoft is using a new state of matter at the quantum level that can help control these qubits. The Papal Conclave will take place on May 7th, and millions will be tuned in to watch. Once the white smoke fills the air from the Sistine Chapel, a man who was once a cardinal will emerge as Pope. In San Jose, Nick Austin, Update News. With the issue of climate change becoming more prevalent, people are rising up against oil and gas companies, and they are hopeful for a change. In Richmond, Nick Austin, Update News.
On Tuesday, Richmond residents and climate activists took to the streets to protest not only the Chevron oil and gas company, but also climate change and for oil and gas companies to be held responsible. Melvin Willis, the leader of the march, spoke about the protest and his message for those in charge of oil and gas refineries.
Be a part of the solution and not the problem. You've already made billions upon billions of dollars, but money isn't going to matter if we don't have an earth for our future generation.
Many protesters called for a new bill, the Polluters Pay Climate Superfund Act, to be passed, which, if enacted, would hold fossil fuel producers financially accountable for climate-related damages.
And in this moment, when California doesn't have a river of money flowing, we're actually in a budget deficit. This is an avenue to charge the very people who are costing the state money for the things that we need in order to survive in the future.
The support for the Polluters Pay Climate Superfund Act bill has been loud. Greenpeace California Climate Director Zach Norris shared his sentiment that there is a need for urgent action against oil and gas corporations.
And since they've been lying for years and decades, knowing that climate change is coming, they have to pay. Because if they don't pay, then every single one of us pays. And people are paying with their lives, they're paying with their homes, and that's just not acceptable.
With the issue of climate change becoming more prevalent, people are rising up against oil and gas companies, and they are hopeful for a change. In Richmond, Nick Austin, Update News. Microsoft has developed its own quantum computing chip that is taking a new approach to achieving the challenging problem of stabilizing the inner workings of the chip. Quantum computing allows for the principles of quantum mechanics to be leveraged to solve complex equations much faster than a normal computer. I have more on the story. Companies like IBM and Google have developed and used quantum computers and quantum computing chips, but with little sustained success. However, Microsoft is looking to change that. Unlike the computing chips in classical computers, like this one here, quantum computing chips, or qubits, are smaller, more advanced, and harder to control. Microsoft is using a new state of matter at the quantum level that can help control these qubits. This new state of matter is called the Majorana particle, and according to Microsoft, it allows the qubits to achieve full stabilization, better known as quantum entanglement.
And this computation actually allow us, just the architecture allow it to be less susceptible to the noise that is around that.
A single quantum computing chip could outperform all the world's current computers operating in unison. As Microsoft continues to pursue its own quantum computing chip, this venture is leaving some wondering if this is the best use of the company's resources.
And I know that there are probably people who really study this and like, the new features if it has any, and that's fine for them. But as a normal person like me, it's okay. But even if we don't have it, I'm still okay with not having it.
Although the product is still unknown, Professor Chris Pollitt gave some predictions on the possibilities of the Majorana 1 chip.
It could allow for things where we could do simulations of quantum mechanical processes like protein folding or whatever might let you do better drug discovery or these kind of things.
While the practical use of quantum computers is still years away, Microsoft and their Majorana 1 chip have the opportunity to speed up the task of achieving quantum entanglement and make quantum computing much more efficient and feasible. The Alien Enemies Act, used just 4 times now in more than 200 years, and never without controversy. We continue our team coverage as I explore this seldom used law through the lens of history, politics, and our legal system. Our country was still in its infancy when Congress passed the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. John Adams was president, and we were warring, if not officially at war, with France. The gray area, not entirely unlike today, says Kevin Johnson, a law professor at UC Davis.
But when you're not in a war, and you're kind of conjuring one up, it raises all kinds of red flags about, well, are we abandoning our basic constitutional rights? And what limits are there on the invocation of this kind of extraordinary power?
The law gives the president broad powers to arrest, detain, and deport so-called alien enemies during a time of war. But critics warn, depriving people of due process sets a dangerous precedent.
I'm scared of racial profiling or just being out in the street and somebody thinking that I'm part of that group and something happening to me or my family.
The law was last used to imprison more than 120,000 Japanese Americans during the Second World War. The Trump administration has resurrected the law to deport several dozen men who allegedly belonged to a Venezuelan gang.
I think it's very important to have due process. The fact of the matter is, this country has laws and we should live by them. But those laws can't be ignored either, just because you think somebody committed a crime. This is not what this country stands for. And I'm hoping that in the end, our principles will stand up and be heard.
Even with concerns from both sides of the aisle, President Trump has remained steadfast in his use of this wartime law. As this act continues to be used against immigrants, questions will continue to remain about the lengths this administration will go to fight immigration. Welcome to Spartan Sports Central. Let's get into some of the action from this past weekend. Men's baseball won 2 out of their 3 games against Nevada this past weekend as they improved to 20-16 overall. In San Jose State's second game against Nevada, junior Rocco Caballero went 2 for 5 with 4 RBIs, a solo home run, and an eventual game-winning double in the 9th inning. Let's take a look at that pivotal play. Caballero managed to sneak the ball down the left side foul line, which resulted in San Jose State being able to score the eventual game-winning runs. Next, our 13th-ranked women's water polo team took on number 1 ranked USC this past Sunday. However, they ended up falling to the Trojan squad 17-8. Sophomore Rose Jensen, however, did shine in the mats as she was responsible for 5 out of the 8 goals scored for SJSU. Now, we look ahead, as it's everyone's favorite time of the week, the Spartan Showcase. This week, we're highlighting the men's baseball team again as they will take on a Mountain West foe in San Diego State in a 3-game series. That starts on Thursday at 6:05. The next game will be on Friday at 6:05, and they will finish off the series Saturday at 12:05 noon. That's all for this week's edition of Spartan Sports Central. Now let's send it back to the desk.